Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Some readers have asked me to do more ad lib videos, and so eager to please them, I will. This one comes from a client who has a son who has, as they say, failed to launch. He is he's actually still in high school, but has done terribly, and he's doing a lot of drugs. And before they came to me, they've decided to send him to an academy, not a military academy, one of those wilderness things with a lot of structure. No social media, no drugs, no whatever. And I was meditating on what I would do. They're really committed to this, so I had to. I can't change what they're doing, and I don't. They're so committed. They would be. They're really not open to a change at this point, and I'm not sure I'm right. But I thought I would share with you if I had a son or daughter who failed to launch because they were not because they were mentally retarded or had a autism or whatever, but it was like the garden variety, many middle and even rich kids who just are not stupid at all, but they just do poorly in school. They're rebellious. They do drugs. It's probably for time immemorial. There's always a certain percentage of young people who just rebel. It's part of their way of separating and individuating. So if I had a son or daughter like that, here are my thoughts on what I would do. I would probably not send them to any academy. Those are, it's like you're chaining them up, and you're putting them in with other kids like that, and that could, they could be doing a lot of sneaking there and develop some bad habits that then they learn. Kids learn to play the game so they don't get in trouble at the academies. But ultimately, I'm not sure it intrinsically changes them that much. And then when they get out of the jail, they tend to go back maybe with a vengeance to their old behaviors. That's why the recidivism rate, both in jails and I think in these kind of programs, and I do know for a fact that these drug dry-out programs for adults have a very high failure rate. So I wouldn't send them there. There's no way. And I will cop to the fact that I'm a career counselor, and that to a career counselor, good work is always is often the answer to every hammer. To a hammer, everything is a nail. But I think that a lot of times when kids fail to learn, this kid by the way has quote learning differences, and they say executive functioning problems. They feel hopeless. They don't feel they have much to lose by screwing up their brains with drugs or, partying down and etc. Because they know they're not going to win in what seems to be the only game in town, which is academic success. So if I had a son or daughter like that, I sure as hell wouldn't want to push them into college in the traditional traditional route where their learning differences are only going to make them worse. They're not going to succeed in that environment. I would, so many of my clients, even very high level clients, really crave the idea of being an expert at something. So he's not going to be an expert in my judgment in some academic, some pursuit where academic success is required. I would try to get him to be an expert at something with his hands, even if he's not brilliant with his hands. That can be learned. Whether it be to learn how to be a robotics technician, or a medical equipment technician, or an electric car technician, or I wouldn't go the chef route because the hours are terrible. They do a lot of drugs, the chefs do, and it ends up being very repetitive. I wouldn't go that route, or I wouldn't go the fine artisan route, like in fine bread maker, cake baker. It ends up being really old and repetitive. I just don't think so. Or, being the sound technician or the sound editor, those tend to be really low paying. The scene is very cool, and so there's a lot of people wanting to do them, and so the pay is crap. It's hard to get a good job, and it's also drug-centered. But I think something like being one of those aforementioned technicians might be certainly the central component. And if I was able to show my kid by visiting people on the job, and show them that they could learn to do it slowly, patiently, with tutoring. And I believe tutoring one-on-one is the best way to learn anything. I would try to get him in an apprenticeship program. Let's just say, for argument's sake, it's robotic technician. I would find wherever the hell the best robotic technician training program that provided a lot of personal attention and support and patience. And I would support it if I needed to with one-on-one. some tutoring if I can, if I could afford it. And many of these training programs tend to be at community colleges, so the cost of the education wouldn't be that great, and it's a lot shorter than full university. And this kid he probably would never graduate even if he took 6 or 7 years of tuition. So I would do that. In addition, I would probably, without keeping him on a tight leash, I would have him ideally live at home and find this program that was where he could live at home, and under my watchful eye that presented a moderate position, some limits and some freedoms, perhaps some earned freedoms. But because he hasn't shown he handled freedom well yet, I would focus more on trying to explain to him, well, right now at this point in time, he needs the structure and some pretty rigid rules. And little by little, as he earns them, he would get more and more freedom, not because I'm trying to be rigid, but because I'm trying, like all of us, we all make progress in baby steps. If my kid was very drug prone, I think I might even do the random drug testing thing, because I think some kids just need that. All of the talk about dangers and all the talk about your future and whatever, they live in the moment, and they can be motivated, yes, by positive rewards, but motivated by fears. So if they knew there was random drug testing, and then he'd be even more restricted. I think that kind of external rewards, punishments, and the intrinsic notion that he will be happier and more successful if he doesn't do drugs. And also if he's very motivated to meet girls, or talk about the kind of girls that are not going to make him crazy and give him a hard time. Really good women, and there are plenty of them out there. He's not going to find them if he's a druggie. He'll find the wrong kinds, and that will drag him down into a horrible life. I'm going to stop there. Those are my off top of my head thoughts. And of course, the one other thing I do want to say, I would say while he's there, and if he's 17 or 8, I've been trying already for a long time to help him. But at some point, parents can't do it all. We are all at least half genetic. And, there's only so much a parent can do, and a parent is entitled to a life too. So having made a reasonable effort, if I feel like it ain't going anywhere, I would at some point, and he was, continuing to be bad despite what I think is a fairly thoughtful plan, I would kick him out. And I would say, I've given you 20 years of my life. I'm getting older, and I'm entitled to a life too. And sometimes that's the wake-up call he needs, or sometimes it's simply he's going to go down the drain, but that way I can have a life. And if I'm married, my wife and I can have a life. Anyway, those are my thoughts about what I would do if I had a kid who failed to launch, and completely ad lib as I promised. And I welcome your thumbs up or thumbs down if you feel it's appropriate, and your comments. And if you feel appropriate, you see right down below there, you can there's a share thing, and you can share it on social media. Anyway, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko.